today's video we're going to be reviewing the Polygon Siskiu N7. I put around 500 miles on this bike, probably a bit more, and I have a lot to say about it. I've made 3 other videos on this bike. It was the unboxing video, initial impressions of the bike, 100 mile review of the bike, and this is the 500 mile review. The N7 is the more budget friendly version of the N9. The N9 has a little bit nicer components, but I thought the price jump between the N7 and the N9 really wasn't necessary. So the N series for Polygon is the Enduro series, and then the T series is more for the trail side of the spectrum. The N7 has 160 millimeters of travel front and rear, and it's a 29er front and rear. If you look at the geo charts, you'll notice that the bike has a really short rear end, and then it's really not the most aggressive geometry. So I'm going to give you guys a full breakdown of all the upgrades I did to this bike ever since the last video. And if you didn't check the last video, I'll just do all things I changed on this bike since I got it stock. So we'll go from top to bottom. So the first thing I changed were the grips. I changed them to ODI Rogues. The grips that came with this bike were really bad. Like, once they got water under them, they got like the motorcycle grips where they move around because there's only one clamp on the grip. Then I changed the handlebars and stem. The handlebars I changed to an E13 TR base, and then the stem I changed to a DMR Defy 35mm. It's a 35mm clamp and a 35mm reach. So the reason for replacing the handlebars were because I noticed the kink on the handlebars. If you ran your fingers across the bar, you notice a little high spot where the handlebar rises. It's like if this was the apex and this was like the lowest point, like as you're going up, there was a kink while it was going up. So I didn't really think it was too safe to ride on, so I changed my handlebars to my old ones. And for the stem, I just changed it out because I really like this stem and I had it lying around and it looks really cool. So I changed the dropper post to a 150mm dropper. The 180mm that came with this bike was a little bit too long. It didn't sit in the frame flush, so it didn't fit me too well. But I just swapped out with an old giant Contact SL dropper post, I believe. And I kept the stock lever. And then for the seat, I changed to a WTB Volt. The seat that came with this bike is, in my opinion, really dangerous because on the end of the seat has jagged edges, which made it really sketchy. If you're like leaning behind the bike and jumping, your pant legs would get caught on the seat. So I replaced the rear shock to a Marzocchi Bomber CR. When I bought this bike, it was advertised that it came with a DPX2, but really came with a DPS. I'll put the link somewhere up here for like the video that I explained it. And then after I kept riding it, the air started leaking from it. If I were to like bottom out a little bit, I pumped in like 300 psi with the biggest volume reducer, and it still leaked air. I even sent it in for a warranty and they couldn't find anything, but it did leak air. Yeah, so I changed it to a Marzocchi Bomber CR. You can click the link of my review somewhere up here. So this frame is very good with a coil shock. The frame is very progressive. The shock size is right here. It's a 205 by 65mm. And the spring I purchased was I believe it was a 2.8 stroke, 2.8 inch stroke. And I got a 400-pound spring. And I really think it's like the perfect match with the fork. They feel very balanced. So I changed the rear tire to a Schwalbe Big Betty. It's a 29 by 2.4 inch. It has the downhill casing, so I have to run a tube in it because it's a wire bead. I've had no problems with it. It's just a little bit heavy, but other than that, it's perfect. Sounded good. So with the 2.4mm width tire, I had some rubbing issues with like the tire rubbing the frame. It doesn't do it as much if the wheel's trued, but with the Magic Mary that comes with this bike, I believe it's a 2.6mm, it rubs very bad. So onto the brakes, I changed the levers to Shimano Diors, and then the caliper is a Magura NT30. I changed them because the NT420s that came with this bike started leaking from the bleed port after I bled them. I tried to tighten them, but nothing could save them. It contaminated my rotors and pads, so I had to get new rotors. I changed the front to Shimano SLX 203mm, and then the back is a SLX 180mm that I got off Pink Bike used. The setup I'm running is really good. They brake really good. I'll do a review on them soon. I also put on a 1-up chain guide and bash guard just to protect the bottom bracket from getting scraped up and everything. And then I changed the pedals to DMR V8s. I changed the pedals because there was some play in the stock pedals, so I got a little bit scared that they'd snap, so I just changed them out with some old pedals I had laying around. So on to some experiences I had with this bike. So for the past 2 months, I believe, I had to take apart the bike each week because the frame was having an issue or a component was breaking. So I believe the first thing that started happening was the headset started creaking. I took it apart like 2 times and it still didn't fix anything, so I had to press out the head cups, and after that it stopped the creaking. Another bad thing is the rear wheel has a dent on the rim. It's not a flat spot, it's just a small little dent, but it's something to keep in mind. The spokes also become loose after like a downhill, so you got to cheer that every couple of weeks. And then the next problem was my bushing started to wear out. I noticed it when I was like picking up the bike to put it on the bike rack. I noticed there was a lot of play in like the rear triangle, so that pivot is like near the rear axle. I had to email them for like a week of like back and forth. They only replied like once every day, and it took me like an entire week just to get some bushings. And then I figured out that they're not even under warranty, so I had to pay 27 bucks. And then once they arrived, they actually sent me the wrong ones, so I had to contact them again, and then they sent me out the correct ones that I'm still waiting on. But that's a little ridiculous. I had to wait a week to contact them, and then an extra 3 days to like receive the package, and I had to pay because they're not under warranty. Yeah, so the bushings were only like 4 months old, 4 to 5 months old, and they already wore out. I don't know why they wore out so fast, but I got replacements that are aftermarket. I got it from igus.com. The internal diameter is a little bit too big, so there's like very little play, but I don't think it'll be a big issue. I'll put the link down below and all the dimensions. So the takeaway for that situation was Bikes Online customer service is definitely not the best. If you're looking for a bike that you can really rely on and then have like good customer service, Polygon is probably not the best choice for you if you're in the States. I also had to contact them about the rear shock, and I think that took around like 2 weeks to actually get it sorted out, because every reply was like a day they reply once, the next day they reply once, and then once you actually pay them, that's when they reply more than once. So besides all those issues with like customer service and the frame not being too reliable, other than that, the bike is really good. I've made it my own because I've had to replace a lot of stuff, and I really like how it rides. The geometry is not too aggressive, but it's aggressive enough to do like rowdy downhills and jumps. And when you hop on this bike, it really does not feel like a 29er. If I was blindfolded, I just noticed like how heavy the bike is, but I wouldn't notice that it's like a 29er. It wouldn't stand out. I'm curious of making this bike a mullet because it has a 27.5 rear wheel and a 29 front. I think it'd be really fun, and I think it'd be more flickable. Like when I'm jumping, maybe whoops will be easier. So I'll list all the parts that failed. So the first thing were the brakes started leaking. The second was the rear shock started leaking. Then it was the pedals having a little bit of play. I'm sure they'd be fine, but I didn't want to risk it. Then it was the handlebars. They had a kink in them, and I really didn't trust them, so I replaced them. Then it was the bushings, which was a nightmare because I couldn't ride the bike for like a week or two. And then the rear tire, which something you don't need to do, but the drag on the Magic Marys is like very high. Like if you're just doing a slow climb, you'll notice like the bike feeling very sluggish because there's so much resistance in the rear tire. And then some more things you want to keep in mind is you'll probably have to take apart like the entire rear triangle just to make sure it doesn't have any premature wear, because some of the pivots didn't have grease in them or didn't have Loctite. So just something, if you decide to get this bike, just make sure you take it apart before you ride it, just to make sure. So if you're considering buying this bike, I really couldn't recommend it. It has a fair share of issues. The customer service is not the best, so the issues with the frame will not be solved by warranty. So some alternative brands you'd be looking at is YT. They're direct to consumer, so the bikes will be cheaper. You can also look at Ibis. The Ritmo AF is a really good deal. Although these brands cost a little bit more than Polygon, you're going to be getting better customer service, and you won't have like weird like suspension problems like I do, where they use a bushing instead of a pivot. If you're on a tight budget, I just recommend just saving up a little bit more cash, because if something goes wrong with your bike, Bikes Online will most likely not take care of it and you'll have to pay for it. So if I were to redo the situation of buying this bike, I probably would not get the Polygon. I'd be getting something like the Canyon Torque or the YT Capra base. Like the components are just as good, they just skimp out on like the drivetrain, but other than that, you get better customer service, you get a better thought out suspension design, like how my Polygon comes with a bushing instead of a bearing. If I had a bearing, I wouldn't have these issues. But yeah, I already bought the bike, so there's really nothing I can do about it. So I just have to find alternative ways to fix all the issues I have instead of going directly to Bikes Online. Have some riding clips right now. Well, that's the review of the Polygon Siskiu N7. If you like this video, please consider liking and subscribing. I'm going to be coming out with a lot more videos because summer's coming up. Yeah, a lot more riding videos, probably a lot more reviews, like the review of the brakes. So yeah, just stay tuned. I post weekly, either Friday or Sunday. So yeah, thanks for watching.